Hello and welcome to the morning sports briefing here on Friday, the 31st of July. Yes, it's almost the weekend, folks, and we're nearly there. In the news today, Rabbitohs make comeback against St George. Black Caps are jetting around the world to play cricket. The top two from Sal's NBL final, make the NBL final. Tactics win back at home. We have tennis players pulling out of the US Open. The NBA is about to return, and also we have news around FIFA and World Athletics as well, with legal proceedings going on in both of those. So a full and action-packed, action off the pitch, packed news briefing for you this morning. Your best way to start the day up to date with all the important sports news. And in the A-League last night, Adelaide United beat Perth Glory 5-3. So a big win there for Adelaide, which sees them close the gap on Perth Glory between 5th and 6th place there. There's still a 3-point gap, and Perth Glory have got an extra game in hand. So it'll take some doing for that gap to be fully closed. Tonight sees the Western Sydney Wanderers host Wellington Phoenix. So the Wanderers down in 9th place, and the Phoenix obviously up in 2nd. This is an important game for the Phoenix because they're on an equal number of points as Melbourne City, and both having played the same number of games. So to get that important 2nd place for the final series, the Phoenix will be looking at getting a big win this evening on that one. Moving on then, and Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, has had legal proceedings launched against him by Swiss prosecutors because of a secret meeting that he held with former Swiss Attorney General Michael Lauber. Or actually, sorry, he may still be the current Swiss Attorney General. Michael Lauber, though, has tendered his resignation because of this, and with today being his last active day of active duty. The prosecutor's office has opened proceedings also against a regional public prosecutor who was part of those meetings, and has asked for Lauber's immunity to be waived as well. Yes, the concerns because of abuse of public office, breach of official security, official secrecy, assisting offenders, and inciting to these acts. Yes, important things there going on. In other legal situation, the World Athletics has told Russia that it has to pay up its fine of $6.31 million by the 15th of August, or they will be expelled. It was due to be paid on the 1st of July, but the Russian sports minister Oleg Matistin has said the payment will be made before mid-August. So obviously by that deadline, the expulsion would have to be ratified by the board or the Congress, but this all stems from Russia's state-sponsored doping scandal that happened, or was when Russia was suspended back in 2015. Rue Anderson, who has been overseeing the rehabilitation of Russia so they can be reinstated, says very little in terms of changing the culture of Russian athletics has happened in the past 5 years. Moving on to cricket news, and a number of cricketers are heading over, a lot of Black Caps heading over to the Caribbean for the CPL. Corey Anderson and Mitchell Stanner, Ross Taylor, Glenn Phillips, Nick Kelly, Ish Sodai, Scott Kuglintley, Colin Munro, and Tim Steffert are all heading over. Current Black Caps are all heading over there, as is also former Black Cap Brendan McCullen as well. Stantner and will be heading over to the UAE to take part in the IPL as well. He's the only black cap that's taking part in both of those before he will return back to back to New Zealand in around about the 10th of November, in time for the series against the West Indies back here. So he's going to fly through the USA, which is a concern, but it's all been held, or the CPL has been held in Trinidad, which has had very few cases. All the teams will be staying in the same hotels and playing at 2 venues, so they'll be bubbled up there with no fans at the ground. So T20 global tours, or global game, are about to return by the looks of things. And I'm going to hand you over to Stephen, who's going to take us through our birthdays this morning.
Thank you, Paul, and good morning, everybody tuning into New Zealand Sports Radio. We're on the cusp of the weekend, so enjoy your last Friday before we head in. In birthdays today, a New Zealand born at USA World Cup Rugby International, an all-white immortal from the 1982 FIFA World Cup, and finally a 100 Test All Black. And that's where we start our birthdays this morning. Mills Moriaina, born this day, the 31st of July, 1980, is a former rugby player and New Zealand All Black who played primarily as a fullback, though he also played centre or on the wing for the All Blacks from 2003 until his retirement in 2011, becoming only the second All Black to reach 100 caps during the World Cup quarterfinal against Argentina. Moving right along, we go to the round ball game. Brian Turner, born at this day, the 31st of July, 1949, in England, was a New Zealand football player who was a prominent squad member during the country's first successful FIFA World Cup in 1982. Who can remember those great times back in the day? And finally, Tony Lambourne, who is part of the Blues setup at the minute, born at this day, the 31st of July 1991, is a New Zealand-born rugby union player who currently plays as a flanker, but he also plays his provincial rugby for Southland. He's also, like I said before, currently playing in the Blues at the moment, and he is a United States international as well, turning out for the Eagles in the 2019 World Cup. I'm going to change it up a little bit this morning because I'm going to go straight into our league news this morning. And in league news this morning, of course, we started with round 12, our Indigenous round overnight, which saw South Sydney, and they've kicked off that Indigenous round, and that's round 12 with a sensational fashion with a 32-24 win over the Dragons. Remarkably, all their tries were scored by the club's superstar Indigenous players, Cody Walker, Latrell Mitchell, and Alex Johnson. The Dragons shot ahead to score 3 early tries as the Rabbitohs played catch-up after a horror start, which saw captain Adam Reynolds taken from the field, so he's a big part of their setup. The scores were tied up at 16-all at halftime. The win temporarily puts the Bunnies into the top 8, but those will very much be results dependent. As we look at the games tonight, of course, the big one for us, the Warriors take on the West Tigers, and that's from the Sydney Cricket Ground. That kicks off at 8 p.m. this evening. And our final game on the doubleheader Friday night is the Brisbane Broncos taking on the Cronulla Sharks, and that's at Suncorp Stadium. And just finally, in league news this morning, it seems as though the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has weighed in on the returning Warriors. And she said, barring Warriors players Elysia Katoa and Celestino Ravavuta Matara from returning to New Zealand is being looked at. Information revealed on Wednesday that both players have been told they can't come back to New Zealand at the conclusion of the NRL season because they're not citizens or permanent residents of the country. Katoa is from Tonga and Ravu Tomara is from Fiji. Both 20-year-olds went to school in New Zealand, initially entering the country on rugby scholarships. The Prime Minister was asked about players' situation at the media gathering in Lower Hutt yesterday and hinted that a solution could be found, but the issue was complex. Well, Paul, that's it for league news today. Everybody have a great day, and I will be back tomorrow on the start of your weekend. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for taking us through the birthdays and our NRL update. there. Yes, we will be back at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning with the morning sports briefing. We come to you live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter every single morning at 7 a.m. with the morning sports briefing. Moving on to Rugby Union news then. And we've had the sides named for the Crusaders versus the Chiefs clash, or the Chiefs versus Crusaders clash this weekend. Aaron Cruden is set to make his 100th cap, Super Rugby cap for the Chiefs. So congratulations to him. And Sam Whitelock is to get his 150th cap. So congratulations to him as well. The depth of the Crusaders will be tested even more. Moody was initially named in the side, but unfortunately has had to pull out due to family bereavement. And they've also lost Fetu Douglas this weekend, who has had medial crucial ligament injury in his knee. Yes, himself, Scott Barrett, Braden Enor, David Habili, Cullen Grace, and Ethan Blackadder are all unavailable for the Crusaders. And we already know that the Chiefs have got a long injury list as well. So clearly this season, even though it is a short truncated one, taking its toll on the teams. Crusaders at the top still have not lost a game. The Crusaders and the Chiefs have not won a game. So, sorry, the Crusaders lost to the Hurricanes last weekend. What am I talking about? And the Chiefs have not won a game. So the Chiefs are looking for their first win of the season. The Crusaders looking at bouncing back from that loss last weekend. Moving on to the Sal's NBL, and we had the semi-finals last night. The Otago Nuggets beat the Canterbury Rams 97-79. Yes, that's sort of Cinderella story or fairy tale story of the Canterbury Rams at the end of the season, having had lost 10 games in the trot, won their last game, and then won their first 2 games in the final series, but it came up just short against the Otago Nuggets. And the Manawatu Jets beat the Taranaki Mountaineers 105-95 to seal their place in the finals. So yes, the 2 top teams from the regular season have made it into the finals. For the Nuggets, the top scorer was Hunt with 33, and he also chipped in with 10 rebounds, and he was ably supported by Nati on 23 points. For the Canterbury Rams, none of their players really got going. Smith got 13 points, and actually big gap between him and the team, the Nuggets players there. Over on in the second game though, for the Manawatu Jets, Vodvanovic scored 28 points. Yes, the MVP getting in on the points yet again there. He was supported by Samuel on 23. For the Mountaineers, Rakua on 32 points. So he was top scored for the team, and Jones on 25. But they didn't really get support from the rest of their team, and that's where that's where it came unstuck for them. The final will now be on Saturday evening between those 2 sides, and there was also the warm up with the Tall Ferns putting on an exhibition game beforehand. Moving on to the netball, and we had our first game outside of Auckland since lockdown, with the Tactics taking on the Stars at Horncastle Arena in Christchurch. The Tactics came out on top, 52-42 in that one. The Stars made a good start, just keeping in the lead until about halfway through the first quarter, when the Tactics took control. The Stars fought back in this early in the second quarter to even things up, but then the Tactics slammed their authority on the game and never looked back from there to win that one at 52-42. That sees them climb up to second in the table, ahead of the Northern Mystics by 3 points. The Northern Mystics have a game in hand though, but they'll have to wait till Sunday to try and close that gap. Tonight, up there in Auckland, tomorrow night on Saturday, up in Auckland, the Stars will take on the Southern Steel. Moving on then to tennis, and world number 1, Ashley Barty has withdrawn from the US Open due to concerns around coronavirus. And a couple of other players have pulled out of some of the warm-up tournaments, so we'll see if they do still go. Apparently, both Djokovic and Nadal are on the entry list for the warm-up games of the Western and Southern Open. But since we've seen Nadal has been training on clay, and there is news that players might not be able to get back in time and through quarantine to play in the French Open, I would say it is unlikely that he's going to go to the US Open. I think he's going to stay around for the French Open. So it will have to see how that all pans out. But yes, it's the US Tennis Association is really determined to stage the tournament at these in these dates. The NBA also returns today as well. It's been 140 days since they've postponed the season back in the 11th of March. Well, actually, I'm not sure if the games have actually happened already. I will consider those leaving in the future. Thursday, 30th of July. So Utah Jazz and the New Orleans Pelicans kicked things off, followed up by the LA Clippers versus the LA Lakers. So those are the first ones. So need to check exactly how time zones make it happen. But yes, the NBA is back, folks. This is now brought you up to speed with all of the important sports news. Don't forget you can listen to New Zealand Sports Radio on the move. Just download the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favorite pod catching app. And join us this evening at 8 p.m. as we preview all the Super Rugby action for this coming weekend. And always, we'll be back at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning with the morning sports briefing.